Welcome to the Percent Bootcamp. I'm making these series of videos because I've noticed as I've taught in the statistics curriculum for the past 15, 20 years, the idea of percentages, and in particular how they're tied to decimals and fractions, kind of throws people for a loop. And I've kind of been talking with my students over the years, and I found some common themes that arise in their difficulties with percentages. And my hope is with this series of videos to be able to kind of reinforce the basic idea of percentages and kind of clarify, hopefully. So let's dive in. Okay, so to really get an idea of how to deal with percentages, we really have to understand fractions. I know, you look forward to fractions as much as you look forward to root canal work. But don't worry, we're not going to be doing weird stuff like adding or subtracting fractions here. We're just going to be talking about fractions in general. Fractions like these. We'll use these to help us connect fractions to decimals and percents. Let's start with 1/2 here, one of the most common fractions in all of statistics. Now, one of the things to really put at the front of your mind is, what does it mean to be a fraction? Well, a fraction is a part out of a whole. So let's make sure we can see each of those parts and wholes in this fraction of 1/2. Conveniently, fractions are set up to read top to bottom, just like we read left to right. So when we say part out of whole, for this one, the 1 is the part, and the 2 is the whole that the 1 is taken out of. I think one of the best ways to visualize a fraction like a half is with a circle. That circle that you see stands for the whole. That is, in this case, the 2. Let's drive the point home by taking that and cutting it into 2 pieces. That way we can actually see the 2. Okay, so that subdivision represents the denominator or the whole. How about the 1? Well, what that tells us is we only want 1 out of those 2. And that would look like this. The yellow slice represents the 1, and both slices represent the 2. Okay, I know what some of you might be thinking, maybe. Rather than having one circle stand for 2 pieces, why not just have 2 circles? And that's the whole. And then shade one of them. And that's 1 out of the 2. And then if you're thinking that, that is a fantastic idea. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that idea. The only reason that I'm always going to have the whole represented by 1 circle is because so frequently in your experiences, if you haven't already had these, you have pie charts, which are effectively a circle that represents the whole of something, and then the slices represent pieces of the whole that comprise the whole. So the main reason of sticking with 1 circle is basically tied back to that. I know where a lot of you are heading. You are headed into statistics classes, and pie charts are a huge part of that. So that's the main reason. Nothing wrong with thinking like this if you were thinking like this. But the main reason is because of what you might see in the future. Let's jump back in. Okay, so now we've got a visual, a pretty good one too, of 1/2, or 1 out of 2. Another way of saying this is 1 per 2. Now, I'm pretty sure you've never heard that before because we don't usually use 2 as a conversational base. But you know what number we do use very frequently? 100, and that's where percent comes from. Percent means per 100. Real quick historical anecdotal point as to why we use CENT for 100. It goes back to Latin, like so many of our words do in English, and basically the cent can either mean 100 of these make up something, or this something is made up of 100 of something else. So for example, a penny in American currency, it's our smallest unit of currency. 100 of those make up $1. So it's called a cent because it's 1/100th of a dollar. On the other side of the coin, century, which would be either 100 years or 100 miles if you're a cyclist, a century is made up of 100 years or 100 miles. So that's kind of both sides of that coin, whether it's 100 or 1/100th. The metric system, a centimeter, there are 100 centimeters in a meter. If you go back even further, a centurion, which is probably a word you've heard at some point in your lives, that was a commander of 100 soldiers in the Roman army. And as a matter of fact, Roman numerals, I just happened to think about this when I was saying Roman army, Roman numerals, which are highly cumbersome, but they're still used. You see them very often inscribed in places like walls of courthouses or Van Halen albums, the C's that you see in Roman numerals are tied back to the CENT prefix from Latin. So anyway, that's kind of like a historical, anecdotal look at why we use CENT for 100. Let's get back into this. So basically what we need here is we need to take the fraction 1/2, but instead of having 2 as the whole, it needs to be 100. But the question is, what should the part be if 100 is the whole? Well, I vote that we use our good buddy, the pie chart from earlier, that represents the 1 yellow slice out of the 2 total slices. The problem, though, is we need 100 slices, not 2, so it's going to have to look more like this. Now, please notice, the fraction is still the same. We still have the same amount of yellow as a fraction of the total. But how many of those little slices are colored yellow? Well, if you took a little time and actually went through and counted, you would see that there are 50 yellow slices. And that tells us, friends, that 1/2 is 50%.